Good evening, and welcome to tonight's edition of Stories for the Cooped Up Captive and Bored Out of Your Mind. You know, I found getting by is just a little bit easier when you've got family and friends, especially when times are tough. So tonight, I'm going to tell you a story about family and friends and fishing. My dad's best friend was a one-eyed mechanic named Leroy Summers. They went all the way through high school and the service together. When Leroy got out of the service, he moved to Somerset, Kentucky and started a towing and mechanic business. Of my dad, Leroy would say, "Stork, I could give you a brand new Rolls Royce at breakfast, and by lunch you'd have something homemade hanging off the dashboard." True enough. My dad was born in 1936 in the heels of the Great Depression and World War II. He'd always say, "Son, there's a big difference between wanting and needing." And I am here to testify that he would do without for a good long time before he ever got the notion that he really needed something. And when he did, he went to his scrap pile and built it. When I was in 7th grade, I had 8 yards to mow behind a self-propelled Toro and driveways to shovel by hand. Dad decided it was time to mechanize, so he came home from work one day with a 12-horse wheel horse tractor in the back of his pickup truck. Well, I was pretty fired up until I realized the tractor would not fire up because it had a blown motor, but a good transmission. So he rolled it under the lean-to until 8 weeks later he came home with a mirror image, except this one had a good motor, but a blown transmission. So Saturday morning we got up good and early, put them in the garage, cut them in half, bolted them together, scabbed a set of drive gears out of a Caterpillar turnipole for wheel weights, and a piece of strap steel off of a drag section to use as a lever so we could change the angle of the snowplow on the fly. The exhaust system was blown on it, so Dad took down a piece of 4-inch steel and some cast iron fittings he had in the back of the garage and made a muffler that shot flames 18 inches long when I got into the big drifts. For fun, Dad loved to fish, and his 16-foot Wachita was like a floating museum to redneck ingenuity. He had handrails, coffee holders, rod holders, and on the front, he made a platform out of steel so that 2 guys could sit shoulder to shoulder and fish in the front of the boat. Well, his favorite guy to sit shoulder to shoulder with in the front of the boat was his cousin, Harry Nichols. Harry was the uncle that you always wanted to sit next to at Thanksgiving. Harry spoke the least, but said the most. He was telling me about his time in the Navy. He said, "Little Bill, United States government sent me to Guam, the Philippines, Japan, and China. All the while, I never could understand a word those people said, but I could tell. No matter where you are in the world, people are always trying to take care of their family." Well, in April of 2006, Dad got the call. Harry had a massive heart attack. It was 60 miles from his garage to Springfield Memorial Hospital. He was there in an hour flat with a thermos full of coffee and a Louis L'Amour Western novel. For 3 days, he sat vigil with Harry's wife, Chris, and his son, Derek, while Harry was in and out of consciousness and surgery. When he finally came to consciousness, the doctors were miraculously able to save Harry's life and his sense of humor, but they had to amputate his right arm. There were massive clots. Harry's first words when he woke up, looked over at the empty sleeve of his hospital gown. "Son of a bitch. Now I'm going to have to learn how to piss with my left hand." Dad was pretty good friends, but he wasn't willing to help with that one. So he excused himself and went right back to his garage. He took down a piece of PVC, cut it on a half section, found a piece of shelving rubber, glued it to the back side, went out to his boat and found a rod holder that he bolted onto it, found an old water ski vest of mine and stole the straps so that Harry could strap his homemade adaptive fishing device onto Harry's leg. In 2 hours after he had woken up, minus his right arm, Harry's second exercise in physical therapy was learning how to cast and reel a fishing rod with his left hand. Now, they say that Jesus fed 4,000 people with a couple loaves and fishes. Well, my dad, with a one-armed fishing buddy, a Pabst Blue Ribbon, and a ham sandwich, Managed to keep my freezer full of crappie fillets for the better part of 15 years. As a matter of fact, the guys were probably better fishing buddies after the heart attack, because in addition to his right arm, the heart attack cost Harry his short-term memory, which works out really well when you're fishing with my dad, because he's one of these old guys that's prone to telling stories over and over again. Well, 4 years ago, my dad had a massive stroke. After 2 days in intensive care, when I made it to the waiting room, who did I find? Cousins Mike and Julie, Chris and Harry. So if all else fails, whatever you do, keep something moving forward.